It was nice being able to bite into food again. I drank a few cups of coffee, smoked a cigarette, left the joint, and took a bus back to my hotel. I was staying downtown at the Panmore, and I walked through the lobby to the elevator without taking a peek at the desk. I'd been in town a week, and they were about due to ask me for part of my tab, which could be embarrassing. I wasn't too flush. In my room, I found out just how flush I was. I dumped my wallet on the bed, then found the rest of my poke in the dresser between a pair of white shirts. I counted it all up, and it came to a shade over $80. I owed about double that to the Panmore. I'd been eating 2 or 3 meals a day there to make my cash last as long as I could. I put all the money in my wallet and stuck it in a pocket. I opened the top drawer of the dresser, took out a deck of cards, sat down on the bed and started to fool around with them. I ran through a couple of false shuffles, dealt a few rounds of seconds, ran cards off the bottom, practiced top card peeks and false cuts. My left thumb was a little rusty. The boys in Chicago hadn't broken it, but they had managed to dislocate it, and it took a little while to get the dexterity back. I practiced for an hour in my room, and the thumb started doing what it was supposed to do. At the end of the hour, I took down the mirror from the dresser and propped it up in back of the writing desk. I sat at the desk in a straight-backed wooden chair and dealt a few rounds of seconds and bottoms while I watched myself in the mirror. When I got to the point where I couldn't even catch myself, I knew the boys at Murray Rogers' house weren't going to tip to me. It would be a profitable evening all around. I put the mirror on the dresser, stuck the deck of cards in a drawer. I went downstairs to the bar and told the bartender to pour some Cuddy Sark over some ice cubes. I sat sipping the drink and thought about Chicago and a dislocated thumb and 2 chipped teeth. Chicago had been a big mistake all across the board. There are a few ways for a good card mechanic to make a living, and if that's how you make your living, you have to know what those ways are. The friendly game is the easiest way. You play with solidly respectable people like Seymour Daniels and his poker buddies, and you can let the deck stand up and salute without anybody tipping to the bit. The average player never looks for the gaff and never sees it when it's used on him. You don't even need to be talented. Not a player in 30 can recognize a deck of marked cards if you give them to him and tell him to play solitaire with them. You can use readers all night long and nobody sees the light. I just leveled with one approach. That's how you do it when you're on your own hook, freelancing on the poker circuit. Another is working with a group called a card mob. There's one mechanic, a helper who crimp cuts for him, and a few shills who do what they're supposed to do. Some amateur hookers do the steering for you, bringing the marks to the poker table as a prelude to some genital gymnastics. The marks drop their money and go home, and the card mob splits the take. In Chicago, I had tried the third way. I went into a real game against real gamblers, a table stakes bit for heavy money. A mistake, of course. But I wanted to pick up a very fast couple of thou because there was a broad I was trying to impress, and she impressed easily when you had the dough. She was a bottle blonde with bedroom eyes and a Hollywood body. It's easy to lose your sense of balance over something like that. I lost mine. I did everything wrong. The game had been a steady thing in the back room of an all-night drugstore. You paid $5 an hour for your chair, and for that you had sandwiches and coffee and immunity from cops and hold-up men. The latter 2 vocations about the same thing in Chicago. I plunged into the game cold without managing to set up a friendship with any of the players, which was a mistake right there. I sat down at 10:30, and by 2 in the morning I was $2,300 to the good. Look, there's nothing easier. A fast game has a minimum of 30 hands to an hour, and the game I'd been in was faster than that. The average pot held $60 or $70. The big ones held a few hundred. You don't have to win every hand to take a game for a bundle. You just have to win a little more than your share. I made sure I won enough, and I made sure I didn't always win on my deal. I palmed cards, holding out an ace or a pair until they would come in handy. I picked up the cards before my deal to leave a couple of kings sitting 6th and 12th from the top, and I made sure the shuffle didn't change the arrangement.